FanDuel.com. Dave Lockren, Adam Shaw with you. 7-game Friday slate. I tell you what, Adam, it's kind of a fun one because there hasn't been all that much news, at all. But a couple big pieces of news kind of shape the slate from the beginning. And, obviously those two big pieces of news that we've known for a little while now are Tristan Thompson's out. So Jijic will likely get a good heap of minutes here for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then, of course, the day I've been waiting for all season long. I'm serious. I've been waiting for this day, anxiously awaiting, actually, for the debut of DeMarcus Cousins to turn a world beater team into basically an even bigger juggernaut that can't be touched and already leads the Western Conference. But, man, regardless of what happens tonight, I'm just happy to have DeMarcus Cousins back on the court.
Yeah, I love watching DeMarcus Cousins play. I hope that he's close to as good as he was before the injury because it'll be pretty disappointing just from a fan perspective if he's not.
Yeah, well, I won't even mention that yet. I was just going to talk about what Steve Kerr said about him earlier today, but we'll get into that once we get to the game because we've got two Warriors games in a row now with a total above 240. This one's at 242. It's just crazy, man. The last one had 287 points in regulation. I wouldn't be surprised if this one flirted with that, although that would be tough. We'll start, though, with Brooklyn and Orlando and jump right into it here. We're going up till 6 p.m. Eastern time, as always. Orlando at home, 1.5-point favorites over the Nets, 216.5 total. Let's start, though, and talk about Vucevic because as much as I love this spot for him, I even talked about him in today's deep dive. The center position, it kind of makes it tough to get the guys at this price point with the value that you have here, whether it's Jijic or Cousins on FanDuel or even a few other guys in the 7 or 8K range. What do you do with a guy like Vooch at this price point?
I mean, I really like him.
Me too.
It's, obviously there's not a ton of value on this slate right now, but he's not that expensive. He's, low to mid $9,000 price range, regardless of what site you're playing on, in an absolutely phenomenal spot here against Brooklyn. So, I think he's obviously a good play. I ran a DraftKings crunch right before the show. Haven't done it on FanDuel yet, but got about 20% Vooch in that. So I would expect that, I'd end up somewhere around there on DraftKings. But yeah, a lot of guys, I think, from this Orlando team that are actually underpriced, and there's not that many guys on this slate that are.
Assuming you look at Aaron Gordon at $6,400 on DraftKings, $7,200 on FanDuel as somebody that's underpriced.
Yeah, he was actually, I think, the highest, the guy I got the most of in that crunch I did before the show on DraftKings. Second behind DeMar DeRozan. So 6,400 there, I think, really stands out. 7,200 on FanDuel is fine as well. But Gordon's not someone I roster all that frequently, but this is the kind of matchup I like him in because in addition to it being a perfectly fine matchup from a defensive standpoint, it's a Brooklyn team that doesn't rebound well. And we really need Gordon to pick up, peripherals in addition to whatever scoring he does. Also can pick up, blocks in this spot like always. So I think the price tag's just low enough where you're talking about a 36-minute guy that should average somewhere around the fantasy point per minute in a favorable matchup. I think it's just really difficult not to like him here.
Yeah, look, I have no issues with Aaron Gordon. I just don't think it'll be. I don't think I'll have him as much of a priority as you. Now, keep in mind, I've looked at several different sets of projections from different sites, and most of them all have Gordon towards the top in terms of value, right? So he's definitely going to. He's not going to go overlooked. Slate, there's no chance, and I'm not saying that means to not play him at all, but I'll probably be underweight on the field. When you look at just ownership right now, our ownership projections on Awesemo.com have Aaron Gordon at 26%. That right now is the second highest projected ownership of any player on the slate. On FanDuel, however, he is, I think, 10th highest at 18%. But yeah, right now on DraftKings, Aaron Gordon coming in 26% projected ownership, which is the second highest on the entire slate behind the $3,700 Ante Jijic.
Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity just to point out that he came in as my second highest owned guy in that crunch that I did. As far as my exposures in tournaments, I factor other things into the lineups I actually play. So it doesn't necessarily mean I'm having him as my second highest owned guy. Just that if you're running straight projections, that's where he comes in for me.
What about the rest of this Orlando team? Anybody stand out to you? Because you look at value at like a point guard position, it's pretty barren. DJ Augustine's seen 30+ minutes now in 3 of his last 4, 6 of his last 11. He is getting good run in competitive games. Not to say he's a high upside guy by any stretch, but neither are guys like Colin Sexton and Reggie Jackson. Does the backcourt for this Orlando team do anything for you with a $5,500 Fournier or $4,800 Augustine?
Yeah, not priorities like Vooch or Gordon are, but I think that all 3 of the other starters just serve as guys that are kind of a little underpriced. Augustine, at 4,800, I think is perfectly fine. He ended up in like 6% in that crunch. Fournier came in at about 12%. Jonathan Isaac at 3,700 was around 11. So I think all those guys serve kind of just as, slightly underpriced guys where if we don't get better value throughout the day, they do open up a little bit of stuff for you.
On the other side of this game, Spencer Dinwiddie finally showed up. It had been a pretty long stretch of quiet performances, dismal performances, actually, from Spencer Dinwiddie. Actually, he was averaging 19 DraftKings points per game over his last 9 outings. So it was nice to see him put forth a monster effort here in that come-from-behind overtime win against Houston. 33 points, 10 assists, 52 DraftKings points. Kenny Atkinson gave him 32.5 minutes of run in this game. But really, in regulation, he saw pretty close to what he had been seeing, even though Russell only played 27 minutes. What do you make of Dinwiddie here at 5,700 on DraftKings? On FanDuel, Dinwiddie's $6K flat. It looks to, I don't like to use, broke out of a slump, but it's at least good to see that he is not trending as hard downward as he was over the past 2 weeks.
He tried pretty hard, though. He got a good part of the way into that fourth quarter with like 16 fantasy points before he just went absolutely nuts.
Quite frankly, he was the reason they won that game because of the late game heroics. Yeah,
no question. Him and Allen both with monster games there.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
that's what happens when Gary Clark is starting at center.
Right. But yeah, I mean, treating Dinwiddie exactly like I was before, where he's going to play, I would expect around 28 minutes here. You have an assist percentage around 32%. You have a mid-20s usage percentage in a not great, but not terrible matchup here against Orlando. Getting him around on DraftKings right around 15%, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, you're not forcing him in, but Dinwiddie at that price, I think, is good enough to get some of. You're making 1 or you're playing 3 max lineups. It's not like you're trying to get Dinwiddie into your lineups, but I have no issues with him either. I think he's a pretty solid play here based on the price that's still pretty low. I get that you always feel a bit more comfortable with Russell, but Russell's a volatile player too, and Russell's a lot more expensive than him across the board, especially where they have the same position eligibility. The rest of this Brooklyn team, Jared Allen coming off a phenomenal game, had to have been career best or one of 20 points, 24 rebounds. I mean, Gary Clark played 24 minutes in that game and started at the 5. It's crazy to me that D'Antoni's been forced to do this, and he just doesn't want Nene or Marcus Chris out there, and I don't blame him. But 43 minutes for Allen, 33 minutes the game before that, and he also played really well. What do you make of the front court here for Brooklyn?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to chase points, obviously, just because Allen scored 60 in that amazing matchup. But I do think that he's still somewhat underpriced for his upside here. You mentioned that 2 games ago he played 33 minutes. Last game he played 38 in regulation. But this is a matchup here against Vucevic, who, while it's not as favorable a matchup as it was in years past, as Vucevic has gotten better defensively, I expect Allen to, as long as he can stay out of foul trouble and as long as he's playing reasonably well, I expect him to play around 30 minutes, if not more, again, because he's just the longer, better defender that matches up better with Vooch than Hollis Jefferson does or Ed Davis does. So I think the minutes should be there for him again. The price tag hasn't really come up, at least on DraftKings. I think he's like 72 on FanDuel now, but on DraftKings I'm still getting a pretty decent amount of him, just projecting him for 30 minutes. So I still think he's interesting. And I wanted to go back, I think this is a nice bounce back spot for Russell on DraftKings too. He's still too cheap at 7,300. Obviously the minutes are all over the place, but they have been all season, and that's just a risk you take. But when he's coming off of a game like he had against Houston, you see the ownership go down.
It's kind of one of these games where it's going to get less. It's going to get less attention than it should. Save for Aaron Gordon, because you've got the Warriors, Clippers. I think San Antonio, Minnesota will see a decent amount, and of course you got Portland, New Orleans. You got a few games here that are going to eat up the bulk of popularity. This game really is not that bad, right? I don't see it blowing out at all. Not that it's a concern anyway, but neither of these teams are going to run away with the score here. You get a 217 total, nothing spectacular. But I think the biggest thing, despite all of that, is just the salaries you're getting on these guys are pretty nice across both sites.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how salary really just has to dictate what you're doing. On this slate, you don't look at it and go, oh, Orlando's playing Brooklyn. Like, I can't wait to roster a bunch of that game. But you have to take what they're giving you as far as salary goes. And these guys on both teams, but especially Orlando, are just, I think, underpriced on a slate where you're kind of scraping for value.
Yep, I'm with you. Now, the next game, I don't necessarily feel the same. Maybe you do. Boston and Memphis. I could see some Marcus Smart ownership. I know he's been talked about a bit actually right now. His ownership projected seems higher than I would have thought, but hey, there it is at 18%. He is, of course, getting run. Still Marcus Smart, though. And then the other side, you've got Memphis, right? You've got the same guys like Marc Gasol, whose prices come down to $6,800 on DraftKings. Another disappointing performance last time out. I think there is, a caveat that he only played 25 minutes, but another game where Marc Gasol wasn't exactly outstanding. On FanDuel, you got Gasol at 7,200. So it's not to say that these guys, similar to the last game we talked about, don't add some value based on their salaries if you dig deep enough, or if you're willing to actually look at this game to begin with. But I just keep finding myself ending up elsewhere. Are you getting to this game a lot?
Really just two players in particular, the two centers. Gasol, who is down to 6,800 on DraftKings and 7,200 on FanDuel. Wasn't great last game, but still averaged a fantasy point per minute. They just got destroyed by Milwaukee, and he didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. So I'm still
11-point dogs tonight too.
Yeah, not to say it can't happen, but
right.
I still think that it's just about as cheap a price tag as you're going to get on Gasol. People are scared because of the injuries and his recent performance, which is fine, but you still can't really find any sort of reasonable sample where he's producing less than a fantasy point per minute. And if this game is competitive, you should see 32 to 34 minutes from him. So, not someone that I want to have tons of, but I think that I'll probably have a pretty decent amount of him just because of his price point. And then on the other side, Al Horford at $6,000 played 34 minutes last game. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute over the last month and a half. And even if you project him for like 32 minutes here, it ends up giving you a pretty reasonable play, especially on DraftKings where he's power forward eligible. So those are the two that right now I'm getting the most of. And then I'm just having, some Tatum and Brown and Smart and those guys mixed in because they're relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, and aside from that, once again, you start trying to break down this rotation for Memphis, the wing rotation specifically, and it gets kind of tough. Like JaMychal Green played 26 minutes last game, had a really solid outing. Justin Holiday played 17 minutes. And then you got guys like Garrett Temple, who went from 34 minutes to 21 minutes. Meanwhile, Omri Caspi went from 25 minutes to 36 minutes. And both games, got somewhat out of hand at least some stretch of the game. It's really tough to get any good grasp on this. Shelvin Mack played 23 and followed it up with 18. And then Javon Carter played 15 and followed up with 28 off the bench. Got a bunch of that run at the end in the blowout too. So it's a tough one to break down, a tough one to evaluate, as we said in the last game on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's all over the place. As far as the Caspi minutes, it's worth pointing out that he subbed in for Justin Holiday, who got in foul trouble, and then Jaren Jackson got in foul trouble. So I think you got a lot of extra run there for Caspi just due to circumstances. So I have him projected again for like 24 minutes here. But yeah, like Jaren Jackson's price tag on FanDuel in particular is appealing. He's still not really jumping off the page for me in this matchup, though.
Yeah, I'm just having trouble really getting to any of these guys.
Yeah.
Ty asked, what about Conley?
He's fine. He showed up in like 6% of the lineups I just made on DraftKings, and he's more favorably priced on DraftKings than FanDuel.
Yeah. All right. I probably Conley's not a bad price at 7K. He's
No,
not.
not at all.
I mean, it's it's really just a matter of prioritizing, and I can't do it. I can't do it anywhere on this slate. Even with Memphis and or even with the two centers here, like I'm not going to argue you on Horford and on Gasol, but I'm just they're very much like tertiary plays to me because I will. Well, we'll get there. Why I won't waste any more time. We'll move actually to the next game with Miami and Detroit, and the Pistons are 2-point favorites at home with a 206 total. I actually have some interest in Hassan Whiteside in tournaments, and look, could we see his minutes go, be back down at 24 or 21? Anything's possible, sure. But we just see coaches change things up against this jumbo Detroit front court, and you see it way too often. Whiteside profile is way better for this matchup than Bam Adebayo. Is he a risk? Undoubtedly, he is a risk. There's no question he is a risk. But he's also really cheap, and he's also averaging 1.39 DraftKings points per minute this season. So Hassan Whiteside, when given the minutes, is still very capable of producing great numbers. And I expect that if there was ever a time, at least, for him to get additional run here, it could very much be against Andre Drummond and his Detroit Pistons team. Aside from that, it's tough for me to get anywhere. Maybe Winslow if Richardson is out, but his price is continuing to climb up above 7K on FanDuel now, 68 on DraftKings. Where do you look to this game, if anywhere?
Not a lot, but I will follow up what you said on Whiteside. And, obviously, if you look at the game logs, the minutes are really concerning. But it's worth keeping in mind, 26 minutes and 3/4 in a blowout last game. Game prior to that against Boston was a 16-point win. The game prior to that, he only played 24 minutes in a 4-point game. But that was a game where Miami's second unit got hot in the fourth quarter, and they just closed with a really weird lineup that was basically their second unit. 24-point loss to Atlanta, 30 minutes against Washington, blowout against Cleveland, 28 minutes against Minnesota, blowout against Cleveland. Like, they've been in a ton of blowouts lately. So while his minutes, you can't, confidently give him a ton of minutes, I think that projecting him for 28 to 30 is still very, very reasonable if we assume that this game's competitive and they have to deal with Andre Drummond.
Right. And at 6,500, you could do a lot worse than that.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the only real news as of now that we're waiting on is Josh Richardson, who's questionable with an illness. If he's in, then he's, a tertiary option just because there's a million bodies on Miami. If he's out, I don't know how much it changes. Like, I would expect that you get more playing time for Derek Jones. I would expect some more minutes for Dion Waiters, who would become a viable guy at 3,500 to take a chance on. But again, just keep in mind that Miami has way more bodies than they know what to do with right now.
Yeah, and way more bodies than I know what to do with. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, you've got somebody in Wayne Ellington who's questionable to play, but it's not like his run he hasn't getting any run. I think he played a couple minutes last game, but I mean, there's even okay, Wayne Ellington's out. Makes no difference. He's not playing anyway. Whiteside is the one guy that stands out most to me. Again, I think this matchup really suits him well against Andre Drummond. And as you pointed out, there have been so many lopsided games recently that it's hard to get a good grasp on what his true range of minutes looks like. And in this game, I could even see him exceeding that true range where you get maybe 30 minutes from him. And even at 28 minutes with his per minute production on the year, still a very good opportunity for big numbers at a discounted price point. Whiteside's really the one guy in this entire game that I'd be targeting. Do you look to the Detroit side of the ball for anything?
Not really. I mean, Blake's price tag on DraftKings is fine. Whenever he's sub 9K, he starts to get interesting to me. But it's just a pretty unappealing game. And you compare people in that price range across positions, there's still players that I really like that are cheaper, or guys at the center position that are a little bit more expensive, like Vooch or Towns. So I still don't really end up getting much of anything from Detroit.
BF Aloon. Please excuse the pronunciation. Said, Yo, Laffy, got to shout out how I've always been an RG member, but always wanted the FV content, but never purchased the package. I literally listen to every piece of content you, Adam, and Josh make now. Appreciate that, man. Welcome. You're in the right spot. Wouldn't you say, Adam?
Yeah, no question. Not biased at all.
I wouldn't get a long follow-up on that. Do you want to move on to the next game?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, don't ever expect Adam to be like, yeah, and at awesemo.com, we've got we've got everything. Yeah, no question. All right, let's talk
I
some
used to
more
be in
basketball.
sales. Isn't that crazy?
There's no chance. That's not true. That's not true. You were in sales.
I mean,
Really?
for a good like month and a half, yeah. And then I went to law school because I hated that shit.
What type of sales?
Life insurance.
So over the phone? Were you
No,
cold calling?
ca like calling people, telling them I'm gonna show up at their house, and then showing up at their house and trying to talk my way in and sell them shit.
Wow. How'd you do?
I was actually pretty decent at it.
Were you?
Yeah, like a lot better
What
than I
was
thought I'd be.
so they pick up the phone. What's your opening pitch? Hi, I'm
I
Adam
mean,
Sharp from
yeah, we had I don't remember now, it was like 3 years ago. We had a script and everything though, like, it
Yeah, oh yeah,
wasn't
I
like
did sales too.
yeah, like, it wasn't cold calling, but it was some pretty shitty leads from people that filled stuff out, 3 years ago and didn't know who the hell like, never heard who I was calling from.
That's great. I sold a garbage product, and it's really hard to like, you gotta do it, but it's really hard knowing that, like, you're pushing something shitty on somebody,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
eh, but that, if you're in sales, oftentimes that's exactly what you're doing.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, and, like,
happy to be out of that.
I don't know, like, where your area was, but I would end up in, like, parts of PG County where there's not a lot of money, and I'm, like, asking these people for, like, $120 a month and
Oh,
kinda feel
yeah.
like an
Oh,
asshole,
yeah.
but
Yep. Yeah, I was selling in advertising, and, yeah, it was not the most affluent part. There's actually, parts of Delaware County in Pennsylvania where, outside of that and the main line is really nice, and then it gets pretty ugly pretty quick. You wanna buy this? You wanna buy the front cover for 5 grand a month? Oh, yeah, yeah. Sign me up. Get the fuck outta here. All right, Minnesota, San Antonio. Timberwolves 1.5 point favorites here. You got 226.5 total, which is pretty nice for any game the Spurs are involved in. Let's start with the Spurs because I think there's a lot to talk about here. From Rudy Gay playing only 22 minutes in his return after a 5-game absence, but being $5,100 on FanDuel at a weak small forward position, maybe some tournament value there. But more than anything, DeMar DeRozan at 7,800, man. I get that the guy has not looked great lately, Adam. He scored less than 20 points in 5 straight starts, which is really uncharacteristic of DeRozan. But you still got a guy with a near 30% usage rate, 30% assist rate, playing huge minutes in competitive games. Well, there's just really no reason to believe that DeRozan isn't going to bounce back. Will it be tonight? I couldn't tell you, but he's not going to keep scoring 14 points per game.
Yeah, exactly. And Josh and I talked about it this morning. I went ahead and pulled up his drives per game stat as well, just to try and see if maybe that's why he's been so god awful. But for the season, he's averaged 18.7 drives per game. Since the start of January, when we've seen him be really bad, he's averaged 18.1 drives per game. So it's not bad. He's still putting up decent assist totals. The big thing that stands out is over the last couple of weeks, he has a 40.5% effective field goal percentage compared to 47.5% for the season. So no real reason to expect that to keep going the way it's going. Like, he's going to rebound. It would be one thing if the price tag were if you weren't getting a discount on him, but you're getting a very, very nice discount. It's a nice matchup where you have Minnesota still without Robert Covington, their best wing defender. So I'm just going to keep rostering DeRozan, and hopefully he figures it out before I lose all my money.
Coffee is for closers. You seen that movie?
I didn't hear the beginning of what you said. All I heard is for closers.
Coffee is for closers. Adam Dorn posted it in YouTube chat.
Anyway. What movie is it? Because I've definitely heard it. I just can't place the movie.
Oh, I don't even remember what it's called. I just remember I've seen it several times. Hold on, I'll tell you right now. They're sitting in this garbage little room, and they're sitting in it was one of the Baldwins, I think. Yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross. That was it. Yep. It's okay. I think it's slightly overrated. Maybe people won't like me for saying that, but that specific scene, was definitely good. Yeah, Alec Baldwin. What about Aldridge here?
I like him. Yeah, I like him.
Did you talk about him? Sorry, I was reading.
No.
Aldridge? Okay.
No, I like him a lot.
I just want to say one with Aldridge. when we talk about him, I do want to draw comparisons to the other guys, like the Montrezl Harrells and the Randalls and the other players in a similar price range, just to see where we have them, because there are a few guys in that 7K range, particularly on DraftKings, that all have significant viability tonight.
Yeah, I agree completely. So Aldridge, it's nice. We've seen his usage tick up over the last month and a half as he's not deferring to DeRozan as much anymore. It's a favorable matchup here against this Minnesota front court, and you should get around 36 minutes from him, assuming that this game stays competitive. I have him in that, again, this isn't my actual tournament exposures, but just running pure projections and, with caps included. I have Aldridge on DraftKings right now as my second highest power forward between Gordon and Montrezl Harrell, ahead of Tobias Harris, way ahead of Julius Randle in terms of how much I got. But, I just think it's a really nice spot for him here. I like him a little bit less than DeRozan. I'll probably have less than DeRozan, but I think that the price tag on FanDuel and DraftKings is too cheap. DraftKings is a little bit more favorable, I think.
This is such a good comment, by the way. Adam Finkelstein says, I don't think I've ever heard Joshua Laffey ask Adam a question if he knows about something non-NBA related, and him saying yes. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's fair.
Rudy Gay is 5,100 on FanDuel, right? And if you're looking at the small forward position, okay, you have Kevin Durant if you want to pay there, and then you have Danilo Gallinari. We'll talk about him in one of the last games, right? And Justice Winslow at 7K. You get all those guys. Fine. Okay, whatever. I don't see any of them being priorities, but I do like a couple of them. And then you have Joe Ingles, guys like Mirotic, Jay Crowder, and Rudy Gay below all of them. Now, the reason I bring this up is Rudy Gay is still a +1 per minute guy on the season. If he does happen to get up in minutes after, playing only 22 minutes last game and sees like 27 minutes, he could end up being a really good player. But the big thing is, at small forward, there are no locks at small forward today. Not even Durant at 10-6, especially with Cousins back, even if he only plays 20 minutes. Durant's already been struggling to give you consistently high-end production at that price every night. What do you make of somebody like Rudy Gay at 5,100 at a pretty weak position for tournaments?
Really good FanDuel play to me. He's fine on DraftKings too, but I would have him, behind DeRozan and Aldridge. But you look at
but the multi-position eligibility is so much bigger with a guy like Rudy Gay, where on FanDuel you don't have that luxury at all.
Right. Like on DraftKings, you can play DeRozan at small forward. But
exactly.
On FanDuel, if I just look down the list of everyone that I can play and how I have them projected, Rudy Gay just jumps out compared to everyone else. And I have him at 26 minutes. It's not like I gave him a 30-minute projection or something. He played 22 and a half minutes last game in 3 quarters. He didn't play at all in the 4th. So there's clearly minutes available for him. This is no longer his first game back from injury. Even if he played 22 minutes, he probably doesn't really kill you relative to everyone else when you factor in the price tag. Right. If he gets 26, he just stands out as a really good play. So I imagine I will have a ton of him on FanDuel.
Yeah, same thinking as well. There's risk there. Look, I talked about Rudy Gay or Mirotic in the deep dive on Monday and on Wednesday. We talked about him on here Monday and Wednesday. Monday, colossal disaster. Wednesday, winning new tournaments. And I'm not saying that Rudy Gay is going to go out and give you 49 fantasy points, but it's similar in that if he does come out to a hot start, if he does get extra run, 5,100, it just makes him a way better play than guys that are priced in the same range like Cedi Osman and Royce O'Neal and Damari Carroll, Jay Crowder and Joe Harris. If Rudy Gay gets like 27, 28 minutes, he is a substantially better play than anyone even in near his price range.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is for me.
Right. We just don't know if he will, and that's what makes him a risk. So I just wanted to, preface it with that. I'll also throw it out there. If you're just looking for somebody dirt cheap and you're trying to get several high-end guys in your lineup, Bellinelli is getting consistent run off the bench. Look, he's shooting really well. Could it just stop on a dime? Of course, but he's shooting 57% from the field. I think 60% from 3 over his last 4 games. His production's been all right. He's 3,800. So if you're not looking to pay, above 4K for like a Royce O'Neal or a Kyle Korver, Bellinelli's there if you need him, but he's clearly a high risk option that could give you nothing as well. He is playing better of late and gets a pace up spot in the game with very high total for a Spurs game. Anything else on the Spurs for you, Adam?
Well, kind of in the same breath as Bellinelli, but Bryn Forbes is still like 4,400 on FanDuel. Well, on both sites, playing like 32 minutes in a nice spot. He's still Bryn Forbes. He's not likely to like put up a great game or anything, but he's cheap on a slate with very little value.
Let's talk about the other side. We've got ourselves the. Oh, by the way, Josh Richardson is out, so they have 100 other guys to fill in.
Yeah, I was really hoping he would play just so I didn't have to think about that team, though.
I mean, I think Winslow's fine. Small forward's bad on FanDuel. But
I mean, I don't mind taking a shot on Dion Waiters now.
Yeah, oh man. Oof.
Or Derek Jones. Or Derek Jones.
Man, I guess. I think Derek. How much are Derek Jones' minutes tied to James Johnson though?
Well, it was most of them, but you had Josh Richardson playing 36 minutes at small forward.
No, I understand that entirely, but you still have like Rodney Magruder, and you still have Wayne Ellington, and you still have, assuming he plays, like Tyler Johnson, and you still have Dwayne Wade, and you still have Dion Waiters. I'm just saying there are so many bodies that could fill it up where Derek Jones doesn't need to benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it can obviously go a lot of different ways. I agree, but I just think that the primary beneficiary here is probably Derek Jones, and then like Waiters.
All right, fair enough. Anything else with the Richardson news?
No.
What do you got for Minnesota?
Not a ton.
Me neither.
I like the Karl Anthony Towns price on DraftKings, especially. Obviously, he's been very good since the Jimmy Butler trade, but it is worth pointing out that you now have Teague and Rose healthy. You see a decrease in assist percentage when Towns plays with Teague. You see a decrease in usage, slight decrease in usage when he plays with these guys as well. So not as favorable a spot as earlier in the year when those guys were out. You have his price tag, at 10-9 on FanDuel, kind of a high point. And then also just not the most appealing game against San Antonio either. So, if I get to some Towns, that's fine, but I would rather get to Vooch if I'm going to pay up at center. Wiggins is okay. Really, the only guy standing out for me is Taj Gibson on FanDuel specifically. Only 4,500, should play around 28 minutes here. I think he's a good play. Everyone else is just kind of secondary.
You know who has the highest usage rate on the Timberwolves since the start of 2019?
Karl Anthony Towns? Jimmy Butler?
Andrew Wiggins.
Really?
Yeah, 2019.
Oh, 19.
Yeah, so since the start of January of this year, Andrew Wiggins actually has the highest usage rate. It's right up under 30%. If you look, he's been, I don't know how much it has to do with Covington being out. I'd assume a decent amount, but he's getting huge run. And, you look at his shot attempts recently, 21, 18, 19, 23, 24, 17, 21, 14, but that was in a blowout loss against Philly. Wiggins is getting a ton of shots. I actually, if you're looking at like a Teague or a Rose, I would actually prefer Wiggins, and it feels ugly because he has such hollow empty stat lines when he's not scoring, but he's shooting a lot recently, and he's playing 38 to 40 minutes in close games. I think you could do worse than Wiggins here. He's the furthest thing from a priority, but 6,000 flat on DraftKings really isn't that bad, given that he has seen a significant uptick in playing time and usage lately. And I'm not sure it's going to be affected that much by Derrick Rose being back. It wasn't in each of the last two games Rose played. You want to talk about anything else for the Timberwolves?
No, that's good for me.
Let's talk about the Jazz here at home against Cleveland. 15.5-point favorites. Whew. 215 total. Again, no Rubio, no Neto, no Exum. All those guys have really short last names. Interesting. And yeah, you have guys like Ingles, who, with the entire rest of the team seeing a spike in an uptick in minutes, Ingles kind of hasn't. Crowder's playing 29, 30 minutes or 28 minutes. Corver, obviously seeing quality run off the bench. Royce O'Neal playing high 30s. Rudy Gobert getting upwards of 40 minutes in close games. Same with Mitchell. I mean, you would kind of have expected Ingles to be a little bit better in this situation, being that he kind of is one of their only capable playmakers, or as a facilitator in this offense right now.
Yeah, and the assist percentage has gone up, but you don't really see much of an increase in his usage. That first game where he was really popular and grabbed 12 rebounds, that's not a thing that we expect to see on a night-to-night basis. So it's obviously a really good matchup. It's a really weak position, but still just kind of a play that I'm not excited about. Like, I'm sure I'll get some because of the matchup and the price tag, but I would obviously prefer a lot of other guys on this Utah team.
Yeah, so would I. Well, you know what? Let's talk about the cheap guys first. Go ahead. Let's talk about the Korvers, the Crowders, the O'Neals.
Yeah, so I mean, Crowder obviously coming off of a really good game his last time out, still affordable. Still I think 4,700 on DraftKings.
Wait,
yeah,
who?
What'd you say?
Crowder? Yeah, 47.
Yeah, 47 on DraftKings is nice. Still, small forward eligible as well. So a good matchup for him. Coming off the bench, should see another 26, 28, 30 minutes here, somewhere in that range, and should be able to do well. Royce O'Neal's price tag on DraftKings went back down to 4,300. He's someone that, I kind of hate rostering from an upside standpoint, but he should get plenty of minutes in a favorable spot here against Cleveland. There's not a lot of value on the slate. He's eligible at the right positions. So he's showing up in, a healthy amount of lineups as well.
Yeah.
More so on DraftKings than
FanDuel. Crowder?
O'Neal. Like, I would rather play Gay than either of them.
My fault. Yeah. Yeah. Korver's another one of those guys that you're kind of relying just on scoring exclusively, but he's getting shots up. And it's all of these guys are on most nights not the guys that you want to plug into lineups, but they're all at least, they're all affordable enough where it probably isn't going to kill you. They're facing a terrible Cleveland team. You could definitely do worse. Let's talk about the other players here. Gobert, I've had a lot of Rudy Gobert recently. People talking about chasing Rudy Gobert points when we talk about him on Wednesday. Well, now you're going to be chasing even more because he had 54 or 64. Yeah, it's not chasing when the dude's doing what he is on the boards and basically just dominating. But I don't see myself getting to Gobert here. Not with center being as deep as it is. And while I don't hate Mitchell or his price, it's going to be tough for me to get to either of these guys in bulk tonight.
Yeah, right now not getting to a ton of either one either, just because, especially on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think Mitchell is a little bit easier to get to. But on DraftKings, where you have the multi-position eligibility, it's just I'm not getting there quite as much. FanDuel, obviously, the price tag on Gobert is through the roof at 10.5. He's been playing incredibly well. This is a great matchup for him with Tristan Thompson out. So it kind of scares me that I don't have much of him now. Maybe I am able to get him bumped up a little bit and get more on DraftKings by lock, but just neither guy really showing up in a ton of my lineups right now.
Do you have anything else here with Utah that we haven't talked about?
No, I don't think so. It's just a team where I think that getting to there's a lot of guys that are reasonable, like good plays, but nobody that is really like jumping in as a huge priority for me.
All right. On the other side, Cleveland, you have 15.5-point dogs. They're the worst team in basketball right now. You've lost Larry Nance. You're down Tristan Thompson to foot soreness, and you've got Ante Džižić, who's likely going to get a heap of minutes here. He's really the only traditional center you have in this lineup. You don't even have John Henson, who is also out. I mean, imagine starting Channing Frye against Rudy Gobert. Hell, even if you want to lose, that would just be a decision that would – I mean, imagine that. That's right. Ridiculous. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of just a really nasty point here because on one hand – Džižić really has to play like 26 to 28 minutes here, and he's a productive enough player when he does play. On the other hand, he's literally like the only value on this slate, and so you're just going to see a ton of ownership on him, probably the highest owned guy on the slate, and it's a backup going up against Rudy Gobert. Like, it can just go so bad in so many different ways to where, you wish you didn't have him. That being said, though, like, he's clearly the best point per dollar value of the sub like 4K guys. So I'm going to end up having him and just hoping for the best.
Pretty much. He's really cheap. How many minutes do you have him projected for right now?
26.
Okay. I have
And
him for
that
more
was,
than that.
I was trying to kind of keep it in check too. I went 26 on him, 16 on Fry, and like the rest for Blossom game.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess you could see that. You're being conservative with this.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I have him at 30. And that might be a little bit aggressive. I can understand that. But I also don't think it would be crazy. Uh, it, the other guys on this roster, man, this is ugly.
Yeah.
And I think if you're assuming it's going to be a blowout, which we wouldn't recommend, then I would give more minutes for guys like Fry and Blossom game. But if his game stays close, I would think that Jijic is the guy you want to have out there because really, going up against Rudy Gobert, if you're chanting Fry or even Blossom game could be really difficult for you. Do you have anything else for Cleveland? For me, that's really it. I don't have an interest in playing, roulette with Sexton and whoever else is in this backcourt, whoever else is healthy today.
Yeah, that's it for me too. I mean, this is another team where you have a ton of bodies. They're not a competitive team, so they can do whatever the hell they want. They're not good, and like the players individually are not good, and they're facing Utah. There's no reason for me to like you said, play roulette with these guys outside of Zizic.
All right, let's move on then, if you're all right with that. We got 2 games to talk about. We've left ourselves with plenty of time, which is exactly what we're looking to do here because these are the 2 best games. Before we do, though, I want to let you know that if you want to get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com, it's very easy. It takes 30 seconds to do, and I'm going to tell you how to do it right now. If you go to the homepage, awesemo.com, AWESEMO.com, click Join Now, and select your plan, select your monthly plan. You can select the annual if you want to, but this is 50% off your first month. What you do, or your monthly plan, you click Join Now, select your plan, and then when you go to the next page, you put in your name, a little bit of information, literally takes 15 seconds. And then click on the coupon code, put in Deeper Dive, one word, Deeper Dive, all one word, and then check out. It's that simple. You get 50% off your first month. You got the Awesemo ownership projections for all sports, the lineup builder, Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, his site, his logo, all of his stuff, his rankings, projections, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, articles from myself and Adam, a whole lot of stuff behind the paywall. You check it out, 50% off your first month. Use Deeper Dive, all one word. Hopefully we will see you over there at awesemo.com. All right, let's do it. Golden State, LA Clippers. It's DeMarcus Cousins time, making his Warriors debut. It's been a long time coming, and I can't wait, Adam. 242 total. That's right, 242. A 7-point spread. Warriors are favored on the road. But I love this game, and for so many reasons. I like whether it's Lou Williams, who I expect to get hefty minutes off the bench. I expect Harold to get there. Cousins is 4,600. Curry's 10K flat. Just kind of everywhere there are pieces you can pick from this. Gallinari, even on FanDuel. But we've got to start with Cousins on the road at the Staples Center against the Clippers team. Now, I just want you to hear me out on this. Against the Clippers team that on the season is allowing the most points to centers, the 4th most rebounds, the 2nd most assists, the 5th most steals, the 5th most blocks, the 2nd most free throws, and the highest overall efficiency. Why do I mention that? Because DeMarcus Cousins produces in literally all of those categories. He can score in transition. He can score as a spot-up 3-point shooter. He can destroy you in the post, on putbacks, literally everything DeMarcus Cousins is capable of doing. But that was pre-Achilles injury, DeMarcus Cousins. So I don't know what we're going to get. It was also pre-playing with Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, and Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins. But it was also with DeMarcus Cousins that wasn't 4,600. There's my intro. Floor's yours.
Right. So I think it's clearly like probably the most interesting spot we've had all season long. Josh and I talked about it for probably 20 minutes this morning. So basically, what did you say?
Not long enough.
Yeah. So basically what it comes down to is obviously the price tag's really appealing. The pricing on centers on FanDuel is really difficult as well. So it makes it even more appealing to save the money there. But he's also projected to be the highest owned player on FanDuel in tournaments at 34%. And as a general rule, I think that fading chalk when there's a ton of uncertainty around it is profitable. Playing guys that are low owned with a lot of uncertainty, like Cousins would be if he were going to be low owned, is profitable. So I think that I would like to be underweight. I just still don't know how feasible that is. But where the thing, in addition to not knowing how many minutes he's going to play, all we've really gotten from Kerr is that he's starting. They're playing him in short bursts. He has no hard minutes limit, and he'll be closely monitored. I have him at 20 minutes. He could play 16. He could play 24. I don't know. What I do think is interesting, though, he played 993 minutes last season with the Pelicans, obviously before the Achilles injury. So we're talking about prime DeMarcus Cousins production. He played 993 minutes with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday on the floor. That's about as close a comparison, I think, as you can get to this current Warriors team as far as him having to share the floor with guys that demand the ball. I think, obviously Curry and Durant demanded more, but he, played with those guys. He averaged 1.36 fantasy points per minute. That's not bad, but it's nothing crazy. And that was him not fresh off of an Achilles, not having played basketball in a year. So I think that projecting him for lower than that makes a lot of sense here. And if you're talking about getting like 20 minutes from him and you project him at, even let's say 1.3 points per minute because it's a good matchup, you're still talking about like 26 fantasy points. And do you really need 26 fantasy points when 1/3 of the field has him? Or are you better off pivoting to, Zizic at the same price point, or just taking a chance on a different center?
Fair enough. I mean, you could definitely get away from him. It's undoubtedly a viable way to not go with the field. Could Cousins also play 20 minutes and have like 35 fantasy points? He could.
Right.
We don't know. And this is really like, when it comes down to it, you have to go with your gut here, because like Adam, you and I, yeah, we analyze this for a living and all of that, but we aren't medical doctors. Like we don't know how he's going to be affected by coming back off of an Achilles. We've seen how guys like Adrian Peterson, freak of nature, can return from an ACL tear and rack up 2,000 rushing yards. And then we see how Gordon Hayward can return from a broken leg and look like a shell of himself.
Right.
Really don't know.
And it's so unusual for us to be dealing with a situation that has this many variables. You have a variable on minutes. You have a variable on how productive Boogie is going to be at any point going forward, much less in his first game back. And then you have a variable on how involved he is in the offense, how much he actually rebounds, how many assists he actually picks up. There are questions literally everywhere here.
Yes, there are. So on one side, it's a brutal injury for a guy of his size. I mean, you look at a guy like Ryan Howard in baseball, even destroyed his career, absolutely mutilated his career. Rob Mingle, you guys are fantasy doctors. And then the other side, you have $4,600, literally one of the best players in the league. When it comes to fantasy production, when he's healthy, you'd be hard pressed to name 7 guys that routinely produce better than him on a nightly basis that you could rely upon. Adam, you would agree with that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the Clippers are so bad against bigs. I mean, they are so bad against bigs, especially big bigs, but agile big bigs like Cousins, where even a guy like Montrezl Harrell will struggle. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. No.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to, obviously, A, how many minutes you think he's going to play, and B, your risk tolerance. Like for me, I think as a tournament player, I would like to have less than him in 1/3 of my lineups, because I think there's a pretty good chance that you don't have to have him to win a tournament tonight. And if he's going to be really popular, then I'm fine taking that chance and pivoting and looking elsewhere. If you feel differently, then there's no information that we have that you don't have. It's just educated guessing on this.
That's all it is. Where are you at on the rest of this team? You have interest in Curry coming off that he broke another 3-point record, which I've said it's pointless to even talk about these 3-point records because they're just going to keep being broken by teams. Like, most 3-pointers attempted in a game by the Rockets, most in a half by the Warriors. Games changed, man.
Yeah. So Cousins makes this really interesting all around. Also, I really am not getting a lot of Golden State as individual plays, which scares me because it's obviously a super appealing game. I'm going to make sure that I game stack it in some lineups just to make sure that I have exposure here. But we see teams all the time struggle to fit in another superstar and play together. You already have Curry and Durant not being staggered anymore, which takes their productivity down a little bit, not their ceiling, just their permanent production. Now you have them, trying to fit Cousins in too. I think that, and with like on DraftKings, you have Lillard who's really cheap. You have a lot of guys you can go to that offer upside. So I'm not really getting to these guys on Golden State outside of game stacks. Not that it doesn't scare me, but that's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little different on the other side though. I like Lou Williams and Harrell quite a bit here.
Yeah, no, I love the Clipper side.
Let's talk about it because with Williams, you look at 2 games against him this season. He's put up quality numbers. He's gotten the minutes. Harrell, you could say the same. And last game, Harrell didn't play the last 4.5 minutes. It was a blowout. I think he also picked up 3 fouls in his first rotation in the second half. 3 fouls in a row. It made it 4, and then he came out for 4 minutes. My guess is he probably would have played through that. So he would have gotten over 30 minutes in a close game. If it's close, I'm putting him over 30 minutes again tonight confidently.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's a perfect matchup for him to get more minutes. They haven't really cared lately anyway. He's just been the guy. So, I think 30 to 32 minutes is very reasonable. He could see 34 potentially. And, he's been very good. I think that the price tag on DraftKings is a little bit more favorable than it is on FanDuel, but I think a perfectly reasonable play on either site. I'm with you on Lou Williams as well. I think that it's just the spot where they're going to need his scoring. And I think that you see him in that 28 to 30 minute range. And then you have, Harris and Gallinari, who are both very appealing options as well.
I'm with you. Tremaine Booker says Vooch will be the highest scoring center and he's going to be 0.5% owned. I don't agree, or I don't disagree that he could definitely be the highest scoring center.
Who?
The only thing is Vooch.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing about that is that he could still be the highest scoring center and be minus EV if somebody like Jijic or Cousins just has crazy decent or crazy good numbers, or like Whiteside at 6,500. So having the most fantasy points and being the best at the position and being the best center are 2 entirely different things tonight, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. And that's kind of where I think that in cash games, you want one of those cheap centers, whichever one, like Zizic or Cousins on FanDuel. Whichever one it depends how you feel about Cousins, but I think you want one of them. In tournaments, though, you're going to have so much ownership concentrated on those 2 that I am fine going up to that mid range or up to Vooch and just hoping that you get, like 26 raw points from Cousins and from Zizic, and that you just gain, 30 points on the field.
Right. I'm with you. Quickly, anything on Gallo? Anything on Tobias?
Yeah, I like both of them.
I prefer Gallo just because of the position, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I like Gallo more on FanDuel. I like Harris a little more on DraftKings because his price tag has come down to where he's really close to Gallo.
So let's finish it out with Portland and New Orleans. The Blazers are 2.5-point favorites, 233.5-point total. So another nice one here. New Orleans defense has just been just disastrous lately. Lillard, man, he doesn't have a 50 fantasy point game since like 2007. It's crazy. But if there was ever a spot for him to get back on track, it's tonight. I do like Dame here. 8,600 on DraftKings is really friendly. And then Nurkic is kind of one of those guys where he triple-doubled last game. I love what he's doing. He contributes across the board, and he's got a good matchup. But it is not easy to get to Nurkic when you're talking about a center position that really has the only good, quality, reliable value on this slate. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, not easy to get there at all. I love the spot for Nurkic, but it's just difficult to get there, especially when you like Vooch as much as we do. Lillard, I'm getting a lot of on DraftKings for probably the first time this season. He's just not someone that normally grades out all that well for me in tournaments, but I do like this game. I like him. So getting quite a bit of him. CJ McCollum is fine as, a cheaper version who's not going to get there all that often, but who does offer some upside if you can't find the money for Lillard. Then you have, secondary plays in Turner and Aminu. It's just another game where I want to have some game stacks of it. It's just one of the most appealing games on the slate by far, obviously.
It really is. Where are you at on McCollum here? Do you know he played 25% of his minutes without Lillard last year? And I excluded, of course, all the games that Lillard was actually out. This year, he's playing like 6% of minutes, 5.5% of minutes without Lillard. It's a little bit better recently. I think it's like 10%, but still, that makes it tough.
Yeah, and I'd gotten excited for a little. There were a couple of games where Harkless was out, where Stotts in those games was
Yeah,
staggering, but he stopped doing that. You have Seth Curry playing
exactly.
18 to 20 minutes a night, and Lillard and McCollum playing together. So yeah, it's kind of an in place of Lillard, take the cheaper version and hope that it works as a leverage play. But and it's obviously a really appealing game, but his minutes have been down too. Like I haven't projected for 32 or 33 minutes here.
All right, let's close it out on the other side of this one. Try and be quick here. Pelicans, Anthony Davis, no James Harden today. Al Farouk Aminu was tasked with guarding him in the playoffs last year. They got swept they got swept in 4 games. I actually think Aminu gets healthy minutes here, and I do not mind him at all. But Davis had no problem dealing with the long-armed Aminu in the postseason, and I don't see it being an issue today. Close us out with the Pelicans, Adam. We'll turn it over to the Live Before Lock boys.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Davis a lot. It's tough to get there with the lack of value, but I have him obviously projected by a pretty wide margin to be the highest scorer on the slate. And I think it'll be easier on DraftKings. He's still less than 12K there. It's a very good game. He should play 38 to 40 minutes. So I like him a lot. Behind that, though, it's kind of just secondary options from New Orleans outside of game stacks.
Yeah, pretty much. I do still like Davis a lot
Yeah.
because he's Anthony Davis and there's no Harden. I mean, it's just a great spot for him. Mirotic is a good tournament play. You don't know what's going to happen with him. He could get hot and do what he does. Randall had 38 fantasy points in 37 fantasy points in 22 minutes last game. So all those guys are difficult. For me, it's definitely Davis, and then the rest, as you mentioned, secondary guys. All right, let's head out of here. Turn it over to the Live Before Lock guys. Appreciate you guys checking us out as always. Good luck tonight. And hey, as always, if you appreciate our content, you want to see more, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out a lot. And subscribe, hit the notification bell so you always know when content's going to be dropping. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here next week, Monday. Have a good weekend. The Deeper Dive. We'll see you next week.